It's here at Desiree News. Actually, it's Desiree.com. And the story is by Zack Van Eyck. It's called Frequent Flyers, the first story to mention the goings-on at Skinwalker Ranch. First story ever. June 30, 1996. And Mr. Van Eyck begins, for species that supposedly do not exist, aliens sure do get around. Extraterrestrial beings and the aircraft they purportedly fly have become an indelible part of American and world culture. You can't watch TV for long anymore without seeing some reference to aliens. It's as if they've hired a slick public relations firm to maximize their exposure. Even Hollywood has a new fixation with ETs. The much-awaited Independence Day, expected to be this summer's blockbuster, is unleashing an alien invasion of Earth at a theater near you. Of course, everyone knows that humans are the only intelligent life in the universe. UFOs don't exist. All crop circles are faked by two English blokes. Cattle mutilations are carried out by laser-wielding coyotes, and Bigfoot will have a sizable bill to pay if he ever returns that rental costume. Well, not everyone. Patrick Wiggins, a spokesperson for the Hansen Planetarium of Salt Lake County, says, "My personal opinion, not speaking for the planetarium or the county, is that the universe is teeming with life. There are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on the planet Earth. The notion that anybody would say that out of that incredible number of stars, there's only one planet that has life, that's ludicrous. That's egocentric to the max. Terry and Gwen Sherman wish some of that teeming intergalactic life would find somewhere else to hang out. For more than a year now, the Shermans' 480-acre ranch just south of Fort Duchesne in Uintah County has been a hotbed for UFOs and bizarre paranormal activity. A weirdness that even the Shermans, who have witnessed the strange happenings with their own eyes and video camera, have trouble accepting as reality. Terry Sherman, who reluctantly agreed to speak publicly about the activity for the first time, said, "For a long while we wondered what we were seeing. If it was something to do with a top-secret project, I didn't really know what to think about it." The Shermans, their teenage son and 10-year-old daughter, have seen 3 specific types of UFOs repeatedly during the past 15 months. A small box-like craft with a white light, a 40-foot-long object, and a huge ship the size of several football fields. They've seen one craft emit a wavy red ray or light beam as it flies along. They've seen other airborne lights, some of which have emerged from orange circular doorways that appear in midair. They have videotaped some of these sightings. They once discovered 3 we did the flattened grass already. Utah's UFO activity is not limited to that basin. Controversial film footage of flying discs was taken by a Navy warrant officer near Tremonton in 1952. A fireball that raced above Salt Lake City skies and drew considerable attention in the Nephi area in 1962 is considered suspicious by UFO investigators. Pat Roach, a Lehigh woman working for Geneva Steel at the time, attracted national attention when she went public with her account of an alien abduction that occurred in 1973. Bill Lyons, a mutual UFO network investigator in Iron County, is intrigued by a 1993 incident in which a man and a woman saw a dozen UFOs near Hurricane. I guess Hurricane is the name of a town. Including an egg-shaped craft with telephone pole-sized landing gear and a large hot dog-shaped craft. After the sightings, the couple surveyed the ground nearby, finding a trail of small three-toed footprints in the snow. Other markings indicated that a tail might have been dragging behind whatever made the prints. Lyons said, "The thing that struck me about this sighting was its depth and the copious amounts of information. There was just so much detail to it." Thank you, Judy Davenport, for the super chat. Judy's given a fist bump. Thank you, Judy. The woman who lives in Canap confirmed the sighting in an interview with the Deseret News, but didn't want her name published. Ryan Layton, a Davis County resident, has interviewed more than 24 Utahns. Utahns? People who live in Utah? People who live in Utah who claim to have seen UFOs. He knows of an Emery County couple whose 16-year-old daughter believes she's been abducted repeatedly by an alien with red glowing eyes. Layton said, "I know they're out there." Businessman Paul Peterson agreed to speak publicly for the first time about an event he says occurred in 1964. As Peterson was leaving a neighbor's Emigration Canyon home early one morning, he noticed a huge oval-shaped craft in the sky above him. Peterson said, "It drifted over and down and then hovered above the driveway. As it stood still, people inside came to the portholes and looked out at me. That kind of unnerved me, because it was so dark I knew I couldn't be seen by human eyes. They looked just like people. They were silhouetted against a green light in the background." Peterson then received a telepathic message from the beings. They asked if he would like to come with them. He said, "It was one individual's voice. I didn't say anything but answered by thinking. My thought was that I can't leave. I have a wife and 2 children who depend on me." Their response was, "That's okay." And the craft just hovered up above the trees and went over the mountain behind me. Ray Kelsey of West Valley City says he was working in a Wyoming oil field in the 1970s when he and 250 others saw a UFO above an oil rig. Soon, the rig exploded. Kelsey said superiors told the workers not to report the incident. They had to tell 250 people not to report the incident. Kelsey said they were taking something out of the ground, oil or something black, but it wasn't a solid stream. It was particles, like a beam. The ship itself had different colored lights and was transparent. Local filmmaker Trent Harris, who is sponsoring a UFO film festival late next month in Bicknell, heard similar stories recently while filming in Zion National Park. Harris said, "You can't throw a rock in southern Utah without hitting somebody who's been abducted." The Shermans' ranch would be paradise if they were UFO researchers. But strange lights in the sky were not for that couple. It wasn't what they're looking for when they bought the ranch 2 years ago. They wanted a quiet place where they could get away from it all. Gwen, a Uintah Basin native, and Terry, who moved here from Arizona when he was 17, had no idea what they were in for. The ranch sat idle for 7 years after previous owners passed away. And it took a while for the Shermans to remodel the old house and move in. Before they took up residence, Terry noticed one of the strange circular depressions in a pasture west of the house. He assumed someone had removed a tree. In 1995, the family got a taste of what was to come in April. Terry stepped out of the house to check on a cow that was calving in the field south of the house, when he noticed lights in the field. He assumed they belonged to recreation vehicles, maybe kids from a neighboring farm riding four-wheelers. But that did not make a lot of sense. The ranch is isolated, 3 miles from the main road, and access is cut off by a creek and a huge rock ridge. Sherman said, pointing to where the first UFO was seen, "It went clear down here and just above where this cow is mutilated. It went over some poplar trees that are probably 40 to 50 feet tall. That's the first time we realized it was not an RV." Gwen didn't see the object that time, but later had a sighting of her own. "It looked like headlights," she said, "but they were a little ways away from the craft, and there was a red glowing thing, about an 18-inch circle. It just lit the whole side of the mountain up, like broad daylight." In the months to follow, the Shermans saw myriad lights and flying objects, including more than a dozen on one evening. Sightings generally occurred during a new moon, and often when the sky was overcast or stormy. Their most recent encounter took place in May, during a thunderstorm. Terry and his son believe they may have communicated with one of the craft. As they traveled west on the ranch road one evening, they saw a lighted object duck behind the rock ridge, as if to avoid them. Moments later, they managed to sneak up on the object. Before it could hide again, they stood and waved their arms at it. The light flashed on and off 3 times, as if signaling, but then it disappeared. Soon after the sightings began, the Shermans found one of their cows dead in a field. It had a peculiar hole in the center of its left eyeball, but was otherwise untouched with no trace of blood. No evidence of predators, no predator footprints, no tire tracks. A strange chemical-like odor prevailed. Later, another dead cow was found with a similar hole in its left eye, and a 6-inch hole, about an inch deep, carved out of its bum. The same chemical smell was noticeable. Cattle mutilations have been reported across the United States since the 1960s, particularly in the western states. In classic mutilation cases, the bum is cored out, and the cow's udders and genitalia are removed, all with laser-like precision, and no visible sign of blood. The Shermans, who keep close watch on their cattle, believe they may have interrupted the mutilators before they were able to finish. Then cows began to disappear altogether. Terry said, "We rode the saddle horses to death looking for cattle until we realized they were vanishing. One appeared to be lifted from the snow where it stood. The Shermans saw the cow's hoofprints lead into the field, but the prints stopped at the edge of the field near some trees. The area where the cow apparently took its last steps was surrounded by a circle of broken twigs and branches. Above, Terry looked up and noticed the tops of the trees appeared to have been cut off. Terry said, "In snow, it's hard for a 1,200 or 1,400-pound animal to just walk off without leaving tracks, or to stop and walk backwards completely, never missing their tracks, if they even know how. Cows walk backwards? Horses can." Terry said it was just gone. It was bizarre. The last of the 3 dead cows was found in January in a clump of trees at the edge of the same field. The cow, which had been seen alive by the Sherman son just 5 minutes earlier, had a 6-inch wide, 18-inch deep hole cored out of its bum and extending into the body cavity. There was no blood on the cow or in the snow, and the same chemical odor was apparent. There was another circle of twigs around the fallen cow, and again the tops of the trees appeared severed. Carr is skeptical. I forget who Carr is. I think I skipped the skeptical parts. I don't much like the skeptical parts. The cattle deaths and disappearances have been troubling, both psychologically and financially. Even while the Shermans wonder if they can believe what they're seeing, their bank account is taking multiple hits. The mutilators didn't take just any cows, Terry said. They took the best ones. Terry said, "I've got a neighbor over here who's reluctant to tot, but he told me they've had trouble since he was a small kid. Now he's probably 55. He told me, 'People will think you're crazy, but you're not. If you are, then we both have the same problem.'" Leyland Meacham, who lives nearby in Neola, knows the Shermans are not insane. He had 2 prolonged observations of UFOs, one in the mid-60s and another 10 years later. The second craft he saw was gigantic, with rays of colored light shooting out from its underbelly. After it scanned the landscape, it elevated, streaked across the sky, and was gone in an instant, according to Meacham. Meacham said, "There's no way it was swamp gas or balloons like everyone tries to pass off. I was probably as skeptical as any man alive, but when I saw these, in my opinion, they had to be operated by somebody. It couldn't be any other way. And I don't think there's anything that we've got that can move that quick." The Shermans may never know the cause or reason for what they've experienced, but they know one thing. They just want it to stop. What a good article, kicking off the story of Skinwalker Ranch in 1996, the first article ever about the ranch.